Storytime with Dad Booker. Appreciate you coming back. Hope you're enjoying these. Today we're going to continue on with Gods and More Gods. We're getting near the end. This one is Explanations. So let's just jump right in. From the rear of a crowd that was forming, Dionysus stepped through and spoke quietly. It's not good for the people to see their gods in anger with one another. Let's head to the club and work things out there. Ash, would you do the honors, please? To the people's amazement, one moment the gods were amongst them, and then they were gone. Several people were ready to pray to aid Don, but were stopped by others. If all the other gods were against Don, then they had no right to interfere. In the club, they sat around one of the small tables. Bertold wheeled up a cart of drinks and hors d'oeuvres, and then went back behind the bar. The lights dimmed, and a single light shone on the small group. Don turned angrily to Dionysus. Who the hell are you to interfere in the business of gods? His fist slammed on the table, spilling the drinks. He became even angry when Dionysus laughed at him. I am not, as you suppose, a worker, servant, or hired help of this club. I am the sole remaining god from the previous group. He turned to address the others. It may interest you all to know that Fred's sister has been influencing our gullible friend here. Don was shocked. Do you mean Fred's god wasn't speaking to me? Dionysus smacked down upside the head. You really thought he was authorizing you to screw up everything? That he would accept you as a god only so he could have you lead everyone right back to being spirits again? And use what little brains you've got. Besides, your area isn't even progressing compared to the others. How would you be able to tell them how to do it right? Don walked over to the cart and found the strongest bracer shot he could. Drinking it straight off, he sat back down and was on the verge of tears. Dionysus remembered that all these gods were new, and this was their first go-round. Memory also reminded him of a time long ago during their first tour of duty under Fred, when God suddenly began to believe that he too was the lead god, and that he'd been ordained as their leader. Folks, would you let Don and I have some time on our own? The rest separated and went into the dining room. Bertold brought them dinner and then placed a platter of sandwiches for Don and Dionysus. Thanks, Bert. Now, please don't disturb us for a little while. Bertold bowed and departed so he could keep an eye on the lounge and the dining room. Dionysus took a few drinks, the sandwiches. From a side tray, he saw Bertold had added the eclairs and grabbed the lot. Putting the food before him, he went into a long reverie. He had a lot of past mouths to cover, and if he was going to explain it all properly. Found the original gods and over-gods were created, not born. You think that they would turn us out ready-made and perfect, but it isn't so. When we were all created, we were about at the level of a 5-year-old, physically and mentally. Fred and Kieran were created first and were prepared for their roles separately, at least for a little while. Then about 10 regular gods were created about the same age. These were the first group and were created before anything else. This club used to be the schoolhouse. For a long time, Fred, Kieran, and the lead gods had the run of the place. He popped a few eclairs and savored them, while looking around as if he was seeing it for the first time. I must ask Bertold if he was here at the time. Wouldn't surprise me if he was the principal. Anyways, I asked Fred about this, and he said it was to form personalities and create bonds and friendships. After their preliminary schooling, Fred and Karen were given the task of creating the minor gods. I was one of Fred's creations. Don't ask me where the creators of Fred and Karen came from. That information's above my pay grade, and I guess we'll never know. Fred and Kieran were pretty close in the beginning. They were both badly spoiled by their universal gods, being the first over gods and all. They treated us all right too. Fred and I became close for some reason. I think it was because I didn't take everything so seriously. Oh, I was conscientious in my duties, but I like to have fun and relax too. Odin and I used to pull pranks on everyone. He got a little carried away a few times and had to sit in the corner for a few years. I just found out what made Kieran turn out the way she is. In fact, I saw it happen, but didn't realize the significance right away. We were on holiday down where the pool is. We were creating sandcastles and having fun doing it with our hands instead of just thinking it into existence. The war gods began bombarding us with water balloons, so we all went swimming. When we were called to lunch, there was a huge pile of presents on the table. We were all allowed to pick just one. I got a big two-handed goblet. Still have it. He pointed to a large jewel-encrusted goblet behind the bar in a place of honor. Karen got a snow globe that was actually a small galaxy. After a while, you could see the planets evolved. In fact, I remember once seeing an incredibly small spaceship crash into the glass bowl. Once you were bored with it, you'd shake it and it'd all start again. I was pretty envious and would have loved to have had it for myself. Fred received a teddy bear. It was huge and had soft brown hair. Fred loved that damn thing. He still has it in the apartment. Well, Karen loved it too and offered to trade her globe. Fred was adamant he was never going to trade it for anything. Well, Karen stormed away and had a fit of the sulks. I saw her looking daggers at Fred for the rest of the day. After that, they weren't close anymore. Fred must have had second thoughts because he eventually offered to trade Karen, but she wasn't having any of it. She was mad and told him she'd stay mad forever. Well, she kept her word, too. Eventually, we grew up and were ready to take on our first try at running a planet. He smiled reminiscently. Oh, the first Earth. Every other one is a copy of that one. Karen was chosen to be our leader first, and we began governing the Earth for the first 100 times. She also got great for her spirit. She made over 8 billion, much more than the Earth than that, and the Earth wouldn't support them no matter what we did. These would become the first people, and when they died, their spirits would be recycled into new bodies. I think I heard people call it reincarnation. Well, Karen created the first spirits in her own image. Not all exactly the same. Some got more of one trait than the others, but they all had just a little bit of her anger in their hearts. I think that is why people don't end up peaceful for long. They have to be nurtured to really bring out their best qualities. So far you guys are doing it pretty well. Dionysus went back to get more sandwiches. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Kieran got everything going, and for the first 10 iterations, there wasn't anything to it. Basically, we were just building sandcastles still, creating people to mess around in them, and then seeing what happened. Then the challenges started. We had to have a purpose, and the universal gods wanted us to create balance, good and evil, life and death, happiness. Well, you get it. Just. The moment that happened, Karen changed. Her evil side came to the fore, and she wanted the balance to come hell or high water. She created a few more gods so that everyone got to work with a smaller group. Well, now the old gods and new gods got competitive. Karen wasn't allowed to interfere as it was a test of the gods she and Fred had created. She found them out. She entered dreams and spoke to the gods until she found one who was receptive. That was God. He always had a crush on her anyway, so he was an easy mark. I don't know what she promised or told him, but he began to change. He thought he was the big earth god, and he began to try and boss us around. He became impossible to live with, so we all tried to just leave him alone. Don looked up at the pictures of the gods near the ceiling and shook his head. Dionysus followed his gaze and frowned. Well, for obvious reasons, we never able to achieve balance, and Fred eventually replaced Kieran for the next 100 iterations. Unfortunately for Fred, he had to use the gods and spirits Kieran had created. Kieran was still entering God's dreams and prodding him to keep Fred from succeeding so she could take over again. Fred succeeded, or does succeed this time. He's promoted and he'll be Kieran's boss, while his new gods will move up as well. His idea of putting spirits in place of the gods was a stroke of genius born out of desperation. In one sweep, Kieran's plans were out the window. I guess she figured that what had worked once would work again and set about finding a new pawn. She chose you since you were about the same temperament as God had been. She played you like a salmon and kept you hooked. I don't know why her and Fred's boss allowed things like this to go on for so long. I heard it was an experiment to see which was better, love or hate. Maybe it was to bring about what is happening here and now. Which type can understand the situation better? God's created or God's elevated from people? Who could be more compassionate and build a relationship best? You've been a person forever. Karen used that to be able to get to you. She appeared in your dreams because in the Bible, that's how God's appeared to people. I assure you, that's not how real gods are instructed by our bosses. You folks haven't had interactions with Fred since you went to Earth because he's forbidden to interfere, and Fred follows rules. You're all the newest gods in existence. You're all an experiment too. Will spirits make better gods? You've been there, done that, and understand the human condition. It makes you perfect for the job, better than any god in existence. But it also makes you susceptible to enticements more than a created god. Now you've got to choose who you're going to trust, her or me. All I'm trying to do is tell you the facts so you can make an informed decision for the future. My friend, you may not be the lead god, but in this case, you may hold the future of your fellow gods in your hands. Don looked over to see what the other gods were doing. They were pretending to play cards, but he could feel their attention on them. He turned to Dionysus. I'm going to go and get some rest. Tomorrow I'll take another look at my area and see how things are. I might visit the other section too, but with an open mind. He held out his hand to Dionysus and said goodnight to the other gods. Bertold was almost shocked when Don shook his hand and thanked him for his courtesy and consideration. With a heavy heart, he went to his room and went to bed. He was curious if his God would speak to him tonight. All right, that's it for tonight. That's Second Chance Gods is our next one, and then Universal Overgods. May do those two together. So that's it. We are done for today. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you listening in. Hope you're enjoying these. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next reading. So be good to yourself. Bye.